Hello there, you are welcome to the YouTube channel of the News God. We're here to talk about the Basic Education Certificate Examination. And if you're keeping up, we just wrapped up the final exam today, or we're wrapping up on the final exams today. And the last language or the last subject to be written today is the Arabic language. And so that is what we're going to talk about today. We're here to talk about the major highlights or some of the major highlights from this year 2025 Basic Education Certificate Examination, BECE. My name is Nelson Kofi and I'm doing this with
the ever beautiful Miss Angie Shima.
Okay, Miss Angie Shima. How do you remember what it was like writing your BECE?
Oh yes, I remember it just like yesterday.
Can you paint the picture for us? What was going through your head, your body?
It was a gloomy moment for me actually. For the first 2 days, I had pain in my ear. I woke up on Sunday evening with ear pain. It's very severe. So I had to write my first 4 papers, Monday and Tuesday, with that pain. And so it wasn't a pleasant. I didn't even know what I was writing. I don't remember if I read something correctly. But hey, I'm a lucky girl. Yeah. God came through for me, and our papers were cancelled. Those 2 papers that I didn't do well in, they were cancelled.
Oh wow!
Yeah, 2015 BECE.
Wow. That brings me to this question. You know, writing BECE is like one of the first major moments for like life, Ghanaians, yes, or like as a kid. And so how do you physically prepare for such an examination? Like you mentioned, unfortunately and very unexpectedly, your body went down with some type of trouble. So I'm just wondering, how do you prepare yourself for such an exam so that some of these unforeseen circumstances would not occur? Does that make
I guess what I've never thought about it, even though I experienced it in the worst scenario. I think it is something that we should look at. We should prepare students not just for the exam, but mentally, physically, and spiritually as well.
Spiritually.
Yeah. So I think teachers, schools, and probably the education sector should look at such thing, probably organize health screenings, things to get the students really equipped, ready mentally, physically, and spiritually for this big moment of their life.
So you believe in the spiritual world?
Yeah, I believe in the spiritual world.
Absolutely, we all do. Hallelujah, somebody.
We'll talk about it more as this story unfolds. There are a lot of spiritual things that went down.
Well, you think so?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into it then. So then during the week on the Thursday, which was the first day of writing the BECE, one of the candidates in Mampong, let me get it right for you so that I don't spew misinformation on the internet. So students of the Asenua Presbyterian Junior High School Examination Center, a student who was writing their teenager in Mamponting in the Ashanti region, gave birth in the middle of writing the exams. So she was heavily pregnant, came to write the exams, and she sought permission from the policewoman or the invigilator to go and use the washroom. But it had been a few minutes and she had still not returned. And so the policewoman on duty went to check on her in the washroom, and there this young lady lay in active labor. Whoa. So she had to be rushed to the headmaster's office, and there and then she gave birth to a healthy baby boy.
I'm getting
so
chills.
That's one of the highlights from this year's BECE. A teenager gave birth during or in the middle of the exams. And my question is, somebody who is heavily pregnant, should they be allowed to write the exams?
Yeah, they should. They still have. They've got the right to.
But in that condition, with the full belly, they could give birth in the middle, like any moment. So why would they be also subjected? They could be asked to take a break. I don't know. Something could be scheduled for them, or at least they could write it the next year. That's what I think.
Taking a break means delaying a year of their education. And
what's wrong with that? You're pregnant. Heavily pregnant.
Well, I think the parent, the student herself, and then the teachers thought it wise that she should just write, it's just pregnancy. Although pregnancy is not just, it is a whole moment, a whole life on its own. But I think she was fit. A lot of people have written exams with pregnancies, you know.
But she's a teenager.
She's a teenager.
Well, what do you make of the issue of teenage pregnancy still prevailing in 2025 in Ghana?
Oh, teenage pregnancy. It's surprising, you know, we are in 2025 and we are
Right.
still experiencing teenage pregnancy upon all the awareness, the campaigns,
The
and
education.
the education that have gone into this topic. I'm still surprised. I don't know if we are not doing it right, the campaigns right, or if there is one part of this topic that we are not touching or exploring at all.
Or the young ladies are just not learning.
Yeah, there's one thing that they always say about the causes of teenage pregnancies, which is curiosity. They always mention it a lot. Curiosity. We will always have curious minds. Teenagers will always be curious, you know. That is why these campaigns are there. But the campaigns are not going inward. They are not sitting inward. So there is something that I think should be looked at. There's something that we are not touching on when it comes to this teenage pregnancy topic. So we should look into it. There should be survey done to look at what is going wrong.
And other than that, I believe that it entirely comes down to the individual.
Exactly.
For real, you should have some sort of discipline. You're not done with school and you want to have sex. That is bad enough. Okay, you're not in your 20s, you're a teenager and you want to have sex. First of all, I'm not condoning that in any way. But if you want to do that, there are contraceptives. And I'm pero. Excuse me, okay. Now, do you have any more to say on this?
A lot has been said about teenage pregnancy. We've exhausted a lot. So that's what I'm saying. Maybe there's something that we aren't looking at. We should look at it again. And I buy into your idea that it boils down to the individual.
Yeah, be sexually disciplined.
Yeah.
I can understand that during puberty, your hormones are high. You don't, it's a lot of things happening to your body that you just want to explore and understand. But again, it all comes down to sexual discipline. You know what it is already. You know it's your body craving this. There's a lot of time for you to satisfy all those edges. Just relax, finish with the books. And when you're done with it and you get your nice guy or your nice lady in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s,
you can do your
do. But congratulations to that young
lady,
girl though.
yes.
She has a whole new life starting for her. What name would you recommend for her baby?
Bianca.
Why Bianca?
That is so so Bianca.
Okay.
Bars, my nigga.
Bars, come on, give it
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah. Okay. Now, moving on to the next story, or should I call it a highlight? This is quite tragic. So, 8 BECE candidates from the Nambagu Yapala MAJHS in the northern region were involved in an accident on their way to write the Tuesday's paper at the Tamale Secondary School or Tamak School Exam Center. So basically, some students, about 8 of them, were involved in a tragic accident on their way to go write the BECE. And going through that, they were taken to the hospital, attended to, but they still insisted that they cannot miss the BECE, so they have to come back and write it. But then they came back and they were not allowed to write the BECE. And honestly, I can understand why they wouldn't be allowed to write the BECE. Just basically more practice allegations or confusions, like you are here after we've written a whole paper. Why should we allow you? But there are visible bruises that could
and wounds.
Exactly. So what do you think about this? Do you think it was right that they were denied their right to write the BECE, or it was fair?
I don't think it was fair because this is an unforeseen circumstance, right? It wasn't out of their own negligence or out of their own will to be late for the paper. I mean, they were coming to the exam hall. They were coming to write the exams when they met this unfortunate accident.
The other motorcyclist actually passed away,
yes.
on the scene.
They were in a tricycle.
Exactly. So they were fortunate
to survive.
Yes.
So our condolences to that man and his wife. The wife also survived. They were in a tricycle.
Yeah.
And they were coming to write the exams, you know. So it's not their fault that they met. It's just an accident. Accidents happen always, you know. We pray that it doesn't affect any of our lives, but it did affect theirs. But I listened to an interview with one of WAEC officials, and he said that it wasn't deliberate for them to miss their for them to not to allow them to miss the paper or not write it at all. It all boils down to more practice, and also you can't just appear to these officials and tell them, oh, I met this accident, so that is why I was late. You have to come with a medical report.
Absolutely.
And the student at that time didn't come with any medical reports proving that this is what had happened.
Right.
Perhaps they had gotten that wound a day before, 2 days before, and then they are just showing it as an excuse, you know, to write the paper. So that was their excuse for not allowing them to write in that moment, because there was no proof that the accident happened that day, and then they were even involved in an accident.
Right.
Yeah. But they are looking at some measures to put in place to make sure that these students write their papers.
What is the other alternative? Could they have just stayed at the hospital and wait for things to just settle down, for the officials to actually take charge of the situation, or they were right in coming to the exam center?
I think they did well by coming to the exam center.
That's what you would have done?
That is what I would have done if I was in their position.
Even in that moment of pain, agony?
Yeah, if I had bruise on my leg or on my head and I feel like...
And the emotional trauma, because they had just experienced a car accident, something that could have led to their death.
Yeah, but I didn't die, thankfully. And I can still write.
It's not as surface level as...
I know. So I'm just saying that from the account, they walked to the center, right? They came to the center showing some kind of strength and resilience. That means
which we must commend them for, by the way.
We should commend them for.
Yeah.
So they came there with this kind of strength, with this zeal. I think they should have just allowed them to. If I was in their position, I would have done the same.
Well, there are rules and there are laws. So I'm sure we all have written BECE before. If you come a whole paper later, maybe the first 15, 30 minutes of you being late would be excused, but you came after a whole paper. It's possible that the papers are flying by now on the internet.
Yeah.
So why would you be allowed to?
So they should set a different set of questions for them.
Well, that is also another option.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so let's move on to the next story or the next highlight. So, some wild bees attacked some candidates sitting for the BECE at the School for the Deaf Center in Wa. So basically, the school in Wa, the examination center for this deaf and dumb. The School for the Deaf and Dumb Center, the School for the Deaf Center in Wa, were attacked, and some of them were stung by a swarm of bees. And two of the candidates had to be rushed to the hospital. The male, one female, one male. The male came back to continue the exams. The female, unfortunately, stayed back at the hospital. So that happened. It was as a result of some NETCO staff members, that's the Northern Electricity Company, coming to prune some trees, and it unfortunately disrupted a beehive in the tree, and unfortunately that led to the bees attacking the candidates. So that's another thing that has happened.
It's quite unfortunate that such a thing should have happened. Didn't they realize that an exam was going on? Why should a work like that be done whilst there is an exam going on?
That is my question. That is also my question, exactly. There is a whole national examination going on. You could not find a better day to prune your tree than the moment when these students are writing their BECE. So can we call it a case of negligence on the side of the staff members from NET?
And nobody else saw the man pruning to warn him?
Well. Or they just didn't know that probably there were some bees in the tree. That could also be. But yeah, that's unfortunately
it's very
another thing.
Unfortunate.
Yes.
Let's move on and talk about something that very unfortunate that happened in the central region, known as the education hub of the country.
Is it the?
Yeah,
Is it?
they are the pioneers of.
I know.
Yeah. And so one student from the Elmina Eguafo district was denied writing the BECE by her dad, with the reason that his pastor, that's the girl's father's pastor, told him that if his daughter should sit for the exam, she would die afterwards. And so he prevented his daughter from going to the center to write the exam. And this came to the notice of the officials when they visited. They made a routine check to the center, Edina Mine Senior High School, which was the girls' center, and they noticed the girl was absent. And so they made a courtesy call and went to the home of the girl to seek enquiries. And when they went there, they saw her at home, asked the father, and the father said, yeah, my pastor Osomafo Nana Kwame told me that my daughter would die if she sits for the exam, so I don't want my daughter to die, so I'm not letting her come to the exam hall.
Right.
This is 2025. Really?
No. Well, this is matters of the spirit world. I can understand what an uncomfortable situation that might have been, because we're Ghanaians, we're spiritual people, we believe in our faith. So if this person who we hold in high esteem, our pastors, who we believe has spiritual eyes to see what's in the other world, and we don't, and we believe these people so much, and they come to tell us that, look, this is the danger at hand, so do this so you don't encounter this. I can understand why you would.
Yes, I understand that spirituality, it scares people. Most of the prophecies and visions by our seers and prophets do come true. But once again, why would God that loves me so much, watch my daughter to write an exam and then die afterwards? That's the question. I mean, if it was me, I wouldn't want my daughter to miss such an opportunity.
Right.
So if my prophet, a revered prophet, has given me such a prophecy, what I would do first is to ask another seer about it. Confirm. And another one is that look at the prophet that is giving you this prophecy. His or her daughter or his children, have they written BECs before? Are they writing this year? Have they written previous year? Would he prevent his children from writing BECE if he receives such a prophecy? I mean, I don't think he would. He would intercede. That is what they are supposed to do, right? They said God reveals to redeem. Yeah. So he reveals it to you. You pray about it, and then he redeems you. So why won't you do the same for your church members, but just prevent the girl from going to write the exam?
Right. But on the other hand, imagine this young girl went to write the BECE and something slightly as unfortunate happened. Maybe she tripped, something, not even died. It would have been a I told you so situation, right? And I understand that this is BECE, and I don't condone this. Actually, I'm actually very passionate about this because it's about religion and logic, and you cannot mix those two together. So I'm just thinking, what if she had actually gone ahead to go and write the BECE and something went wrong, and probably she also died. She wrote the BECE.
Yes. So when the officials went home, talked to the father, he was reluctant. But in the end, they forcefully brought the girl to
all the subjects.
Yes, to write all the subjects. And we haven't heard of any.
She didn't die.
We haven't heard of any.
Okay,
news
now
of
at
her
this
death.
point, that we need to be holding these prophets accountable to some of these wrong predictions.
Yes.
Because now. There's
nothing about her death going around. She came to write the exam.
I'm wondering, can something be done to these prophets? Can the law work on them in some way? I understand this is religion and these are religious matters, but you can't keep doing this. This was obviously a deceit.
A sabotage.
Because it did not happen. So imagine if this young girl did not go to write the papers, then she would have had to sit for the next year BECE.
She's never going to write at all. If the prophecy is given that she writes
exactly.
BECE, she should die, that means she shouldn't go to school at all.
This is absolutely unforgivable.
There's one thought that I'm having that I don't really want to say, but oh God, forgive me. They said, do not speak against my prophet or my anointed. But this is just a thought I'm having, and I pray the heavens forgive me if I'm wrong. So I'm thinking, right, what if the prophet thinks that this girl is so brilliant and she might outshine my children, so let me just prevent her from writing the BECE so that she doesn't shine, and my children will be the shining star of the
theorists. Okay, that is a thought like you already mentioned, but I believe that is far-fetched. I don't think he cares enough about. I think he just wanted to get his power across. Like, I'm telling you, don't do this or this. You know how some of the pastors can be so authoritative. And I was careful in constructing the sentence. I would have said fake pastors. But even though this came out wrong, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a fake prophet or fake pastor.
It doesn't necessarily.
So we are not calling him a fake pastor. But this was a lie.
We've seen cases like that.
So he has seen this this prophecy, this vision. What is he doing about it?
That's my question. It is revealed to you to intercede so God can redeem you. What did you do about it as a prophet? Than just go ahead and leave it into the hands of the Father. I heard of a case where a lady wanted to marry a man, brought the man to the prophet, asked, "Oh, prophet, please look into this for me. Is this the right marriage for me?" And the prophet, it was actually a prophetess. The prophetess said, "Oh no, God doesn't want you to marry this man. This is not a man for you." And the prophetess went behind to connect her daughter and this man.
Well, it's not for you, it's for my daughter. Simply.
How is something not good for me, but it's good for your daughter? So some prophets, they don't really tell us the truth.
And that's unfortunate. And not the prophets, the fake ones. The fake ones will not tell us the truth. And that's quite unfortunate. But we cannot talk about BECE and not talk about more practices. So the head of public affairs of WAEC, who goes by the name John Kebi, has indicated or disclosed that a total number of 16 individuals, 16 and counting, have been arrested in connection with more practices in this year's BECE.
16 students or
16
invigilators,
12 invigilators, 1 supervisor, and 3 people who were not even linked to the examination in any way. They were not students, they were not invigilators, they were not supervisors. They just came around helping people,
like
impersonation. Absolutely. So that's what has gone on. And I believe even WAEC has reported, or it's been reported generally, that this year's BECE were pretty smooth. We've not had too many. These are some tragic stories that we just talked about, but comparing past years and cancellation of BECE papers like you experienced, this year was pretty much smoother as compared than others.
Probably because we went at the center, we think it's smooth.
Arresting
16 plus people isn't a smooth thing.
Oh my God, we have like 16 regions in Ghana. So far, if they've arrested only 16, I know that's still terrible, but only yes, people have had. There were more severe issues than we've experienced. There
are accidents.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't talk about this one. There are some students who died died by drowning while going to their exam center in the Uti region.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so some students were, I don't have the fact right, but I think they were crossing a river with a boat and then they drowned. The boat capsized and then they drowned. I think 8 of them died on the spot when their bodies were retrieved from the river, and then 2 of them survived. They could actually swim out of the river, but 8 of them ended up dying. That's what happened.
Wow, that is quite unfortunate. Okay then. Well, then we can agree that this was not. I'd like to state again, like compared to the other years, the previous years, this one, as reported, was pretty much smoother.
I don't agree with you. I don't think it was smooth.
So you are not agreeing with what's on the internet?
Yeah, I mean,
what has been reported by WAEC?
Do you expect WAEC to come and say, oh, this year's BEC was very gruesome, we experienced death and all this? I mean, they'll look at the brighter side. But we have students dying, others missing their papers, and others injured, wounded. It's not a good thing.
Well, okay. Well, then let's leave it up to the viewers. What do you think? Leave it in the comments. What you think? Was this year's BC smoother compared to the previous years? If it's yes, let us know. If it's no, let us know in the comments. My name is Nelson Kofi, and we've had a discussion about the BC for this year, and this is, pretty much the last day they're going to write the BC for this year. So that's what we talked about, and we encourage you to like, comment, share, subscribe to the News Code for more of these discussions. My name is Nelson Kofi, like I already mentioned, and I did this with
Angela Deladem Kufuor or Miss Angie Shima.
All right. Thank you so much.